Hello, so we are here on the ground at Houston Hobby, and we're going to perform a short flight from Houston to Dallas. I'm a member of the SouthWest Virtual Airlines, and this is, of course, a real-world flight. So the first thing we're going to do is pull up the Love Cars app for SouthWest Virtual Airlines, and we're going to go to Timetable. We're going to see if we can find a flight to Dallas. And today we're in the 737-700, so we're going to go ahead and pick that. It looks like flight number 20 departs at 11 a.m. We're not going to do this in real time, but you can see the departure gate is 23, arrival gate is 10. Flight time about 1 hour and 10 minutes, and here's the tail number of the aircraft. So what we're going to do is first hop in the cockpit, make sure we have our parking brake set, which it is. And let's go back to Love Cars, and we're going to double click, start the flight. And there we go. So the next thing we want to do is go ahead and dispatch our flight plan. So let me check what they are doing at Houston today. So if we go to the ATIS and pull up KHOU, great free resource here for the weather. You can see that the winds are currently 220 at 10, gusting 19. So some decent winds out there today. 10 miles of visibility, broken clouds at 3,700, temperatures 33, so it's a hot one. Altimeter's 2993, and it looks like we're doing the departure and landings on runway 22. So runway 22 is what we're going to be looking for. So we're going to go back to our Love Cars app here, and we're just going to go ahead and put in the departure runway as 22. We'll let it pick the arrival runway, and it has this default route in here. Is the most common route, the WESLYN 8 departure magic transition with the red and 4 arrival. So we'll go ahead and request that dispatch. And it's going to go ahead and run that through SimBrief. Takes just a couple of seconds. Alright, there we go. So we have our flight plan here. You can see our departure and arrival times. You can see the flight number 20. It's got the tail number of the aircraft. It's not matching the actual livery that we're flying in the sim today, but it is a 737-700. Most important thing, you want to make sure that you are flying the correct type aircraft for the flight plan, because obviously your fuel will not match up if you're flying an 800, for example. Here's our routing right here. You can see top of climb today is going to be 30,000 feet. The average wind on the flight is going to be from 291 at 44 knots, and some other things. Important information here: zero fuel load. So this is basically how many passengers and cargo we're going to be taking. So looking at 112.4, and then also maximum planned fuel. Down here is looks like about 10,000, and couple other things. Basically, I mean, that's the most important stuff that you want to be looking at from the flight plan, but it goes into great detail here throughout the flight. Every leg of the flight, every waypoint is registered here. Here's all of our waypoints. You can see things like the expected fuel that we'd have at that waypoint, the indicated airspeed at that waypoint, the altitude at that waypoint. So it really dives deep into the flight plan. You can also pull the weather up right here for our departure airport as well. So most important thing we're going to be looking at right away is the 2993 for setting our altimeters. Okay, so we are good. We have started this flight, so we can go ahead and minimize this, and let's hop into the cockpit and start getting things ready to go. Alright, so first thing to do is we need to get some power to the aircraft. So what you're going to do is you're going to go up to your overhead panel, and first thing you have to do is turn on the battery, and then with ground power connected to the aircraft, we can go ahead and enable that. And now we are powering completely off of the ground. Go ahead and enable our emergency exit lights right there. And now the aircraft has some power. We'll turn on the navigation lights as we're sitting here at the gate. Pretty standard procedure there. And then the next most important thing we need to do is go and get our iris aligned. That is the iris that's going to be our navigational system, and we're going to use that to find our way to Dallas. So we'll just switch this over to heading STS. And what this is going to do is give us a countdown in minutes until the iris is aligned. Basically, I have it set up so that it aligns really quickly so we don't have to wait for that. Okay, jumping back down into the cockpit, we can disable the master caution. And we're going to go over to our EFB, our tablet here, go to the electronic flight bag, and we're going to request our flight plan data from SimBrief. As you can see, it has already automatically loaded that into the tablet. Again, we're looking at altimeter of 2993, so as soon as our screens come to life here, we'll go ahead and get that set up. And in the meantime, what we can do is go ahead and start getting our passengers loaded. The GSX add-on is a really great add-on for that, but if you don't have it, it's really easy to do. You can just go down into your FMC, and you can go to FS Actions, you can go to Payload, and then right here where it says 0 fuel weight, it's currently set to 120.6. If we go back and look at our flight plan on Love Cars, we had a 0 fuel weight of 112.4. So what I could do is literally just put in 112.4 just like that, and it would go ahead and instantly load our passengers and cargo. Now obviously that probably isn't super realistic, so what I'm going to do is set that to 0. You can see it has removed all of the passengers, all of the cargo from the aircraft. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use GSX, and we're going to go ahead and start. Let's do reload SimBrief. It's going to reload our current flight plan. You see SimBrief OK. We're going to go ahead and request boarding. What that's going to do is that's going to start bringing the baggage trucks over here. They're going to come over and start loading up the cargo, as well as the passengers are going to start getting on the aircraft. So while that's happening, you can see we have power to our screens. Again, we're looking at 2993 on the altimeter, which is only one up from what we have. So 2993 there, 2993 on the standby, and 2993 on the co-pilot display. So altimeter set ×3, good to go. All right, next thing to do is if you were flying on the VATSIM network, which I'm going to go ahead and do, is we want to go ahead and get our radio frequency set up. And in order to figure that out, what we can do is open up Navigraph here. We're going to go to flights. We're going to import flight, import from SimBrief, and here's our flight plan KHOU, it's KDAL. It's going to import our entire flight plan right here into Navigraph, and we want to pull up the airport chart for Houston Hobby. You can see right here tower is 118.7. So currently there's not actually any air controllers online here in Houston. If there was, you would just tune to the appropriate frequency, whether it was a tower controller, ground controller, or perhaps a departure controller, or even a center controller. It's a top-down approach, so if a center controller is online, they're going to control everything all the way to the ground. They're going to give you your flight clearance, your taxi clearance, your takeoff clearance, etc. So since no one is online, we're going to go to tower for this airport, which is 118.7. So let's hop back down here, and we're going to do 118.7. And actually, I need to log into the network. So let me just get this plugged in. There's 118.7, that's in. And then once we're in the air, we would go to Unicom, which is a standard frequency used on VATSIM whenever no controllers are online, which would be 1228. So let me file the flight plan pre-file here on VATSIM. It's going to open up my VATSIM account. We're going to just copy the flight number. Okay, that has been filed. We can close that. We're going to connect to the network. Connect. All right, we are live on VATSIM. Okay, we can minimize that. And we basically just got our auto clearance. We're cleared to Dallas Love as filed, and our squawk code is going to be 7407. So let's go ahead and plug that in while we're thinking about it. So 7407 goes in the box right there. 7407 checks and confirms. We're going to leave that in standby mode for now. So that's all we need there. Okay, so radios and the squawk is set. We're waiting for the iris to align. Actually, what we need to do is go ahead and plug in our position. And I'm not sure why GSX hasn't started boarding yet. Let's see. Request boarding. See if that, there we go. Now it's going to work. Jump out the aircraft, and you can see that the cargo trucks are starting to arrive. The cargo doors have been open. And looks like we have an aircraft sitting next to us. Yeah, they're not at the same gate. Wow, he's in a he's in a heavy aircraft at the wrong gate, but interesting. Okay, so that's VATSIM for you. Do we want to connect the pushback tug right now? No, we're going to click no on that one. Uh-oh. That's not good. GSX just crashed. That's awesome. And we'll try this one more time. If not, we'll just load it manually. Alright. Now let's hop down here and get our aircraft set up. So we're going to go to Menu, FMC, and so this is your flight management computer, I think is what you call it. This is where you're going to basically input your flight route. All of all of your navigation is handled here. It's really not too complicated, but what you first have to do. There we go. Now we're going to have the crew coming in. You hear them opening the doors. All right. What you first have to do is set up your current position. So you're going to go position in it, and we're going to put in the iCal for the airport, which is KHOU. That's our reference airport right there. And then we're going to go to the next page, grab the GPS coordinates here on GPS left, copy that by clicking the button right there, go to the previous page, and then paste it right in there just like that. Now our iris has been aligned. You can see that our display has changed, so that looks good.
Hello.
Now what we need to do is go to route, and since we have already loaded our route from SimBrief into the tablets, all we're going to do here is we already have KHOU in the scratch pad. We're going to type in our destination, which is KDAL, and we're going to plug that right into company route. There you go. So you can see it's ready to activate. But first we need to plug in a couple of things. We know we're going to be departing on runway 22. So we're going to put that in right there. And then for the flight number, today we are SouthWest Airlines SWA 20. Just like that. If we hit the next page, you can see that here it's a pretty simple routing today. If you remember, if we go back and look at Love Cars, basically we're just doing the WESLYN 8 departure with the Magic transition, so we really only have one waypoint in between the arrival, which is the red and 4 arrival, into Dallas. So there's our one waypoint. We can activate and execute. Now the next thing we do is set up our departure and arrivals, and that's where we're going to select the actual RNAV departure that we are doing from Houston. So let's look at our charts here and show you what I'm talking about. So it's already preloaded our charts in here when we imported our data into Navigraph. It's a great thing about that. We go ahead and open up the WESLYN 8 departure chart. And you know we're going to be departing runway 22, so here it has this specific instructions. We're going to climb on heading 221, which is the runway heading, to 700 feet. And then you typically have radar vectors to the WESLYN transition, and our top of altitude is listed right here. In this case, is 16,000 feet. Now again, ATC is not online, so we're going to just vector ourselves over to WESLYN. So runway 22 is going to be coming this direction, so we're going to take off this direction. And then knowing how the arrivals come into Houston, it's going to be basically, as soon as we get to, 700 feet, we're going to start a right turn straight away, and we're going to turn out this direction and then vector over to WESLYN. And then from WESLYN, we continue on the departure out to Mont, Killjoy, and then Magic here. That's the end of the departure. If we close that, you can see here we are. We're going to take off like this. We're going to turn this way to WESLYN, Mont, Killjoy, Magic. And then we pretty much go straight into that arrival into Dallas. And it looks like we have some controllers online. Looks like approach controllers online at Dallas. Who knows if they'll still be online by the time we get there. But We look at the Redden for arrival, and this is what that chart looks like. So here's Magic. This is where we enter the arrival, and then we have some restrictions on this arrival into Dallas that we have to follow. And the flight control, the FMC, your navigational computer is already going to do this for you. It's already going to have all this in here. So basically, you're just going to verify that all this information is correct. The first restriction here is that happens, and it's saying that we have to be at 280 knots, below 30,000 feet because the line is over the number, but above 24,000 feet because the line is under the number. So we need to be between 30,000 and 24,000 feet at 280 knots when we cross happens. Then we go to here, then Jaxie, then we go to Orville, and that is at 250 knots and at 9,000 feet. So when it has the lines above and below, that means you have to be at that exact altitude. From there we go to G-Bear, and then Redden, and then I guess Bacher is how you say that. And then from there, the way they usually handle it in Dallas is they would vector you in. Most likely going to be landing on runway 3. Let's take a look at that because the winds should be out of the south. Sorry, runway 13 is what I'm going to say. So 13 left, typical arrival into Dallas. So basically from Bacher, you would get vectored into your landing runway, which 13 left is this runway here. So let's close that. Let's go to our flights, and let's go ahead and select our approaches. Now we know we're probably going to be landing ILS 13 left, so we'll just go ahead and add that in right there. And if you look at that, you can see, let me turn off the traffic, hide, okay, get that out of the way. So if you look at the map here, you can see here's that last waypoint Bacher in the arrival, and then from here they would typically vector us out like this and then turn us into Wade's and then Nate, which is here's your approach plate for that approach into Dallas Love. You can see runway 13 left. It's got all of your critical information here, your localizer frequency that we would tune so the autopilot can fly that ILS approach, your final approach course, which is going to be important. And then you can see things like your minimum altitude here, 685 feet. You can also see the, let's see, where's it at? You can see, well, here's your missed approach. So if you do have a missed approach, it has specific instructions: climb to 1,000 feet, then climbing left turn to 3,000 feet, and so on. And then here you can see your airport elevation is 487 feet. So typically your minimums for an ILS approach is around 200 250 feet or so above the ground. So that's basically the minimum altitude that you can fly without visual contact with the runway before you can make the decision to land or not. Okay, so that is done. So there is our flight planning. Let's go ahead and get that plugged into our FMC. So we know departure, runway 22 selected. Looking for that WESLYN 8 departure. There it is. And the Magic transition. So runway 22, WESLYN 8, Magic, execute. Go back to index. Now we can set up our arrival. Now we don't have to do this now. If it's a really long flight, you could always do your arrival later in flight. But I like to go ahead and just get it, initially set up. So we're looking for ILS 13 left, select. And again, it is the Redden 4 arrival. Transition is the Magic transition. And then sometimes you'll have a Vias that you can select, Via, which in this case we don't. But so it's pretty simple. ILS 13 left, you just confirm Redden 4 arrival, Magic transition, execute. Now you can go to the legs page here and you can actually cycle through these. Let's switch this to plan view. And if you watch, when I click step here, let me zoom out a little bit. When I click step here, what it's going to do is jump through the waypoints. So here's that WESLYN waypoint, Mont, Killjoy, Magic. You can see that same departure north out of Houston. It'll step through every single waypoint throughout the flight plan, and you can verify that everything looks good on your flight computer there. And here's where we'd come out like this, and then vectors, turn around vectors into runway 13 left into Dallas. So that looks good. So we can go back to map view, and we'll jump down to the FMC again. And again, you can see all of your waypoints in right there. Okay. So we'll click the legs page again to jump back to the top. That is now done. Our passengers have been loaded. You can verify that outside. nice views there. All right, so jumping back into the cockpits, we need to set up the initialization for the aircraft. Now, before we do that, let's go ahead and get the APU up and running. It's pretty hot outside today, so they're probably getting pretty toasty in the cabin right now. So what we're going to do first is turn on the left aft fuel pump, and then we're going to go to, actually before we do that, I forgot to load fuel into the aircraft, so let's do that real quick. Let's come over here, and we can use this FMC over here. So let's verify. Zero fuel weight shows 112.3. Let's make sure that that's correct. That is what we're supposed to be flying. 112.4, that's good. It's close enough. And then the planned fuel was, looks like 10,000. Let me just pull this up real quick. So about 9,989. So we'll just round up to 10,000. Okay, so we're gonna go over here, go to fuel, and we'll set this to 10,000. So there's our 10,000 pounds of fuel. Now, before we actually take the parking brake off and leave the gate, when you're flying with a virtual airline, Southwest policy says we have to land at Dallas with at least 4,000 pounds of fuel remaining on the aircraft, or the flight won't get approved. So that's something that we do need to consider. All right, so now let's do our initialization page. Oh, actually, before that, let's start the APU. So we got the aft fuel pump on. We're gonna go, here's APU. It's on the off position. You're gonna click it over to the on position, and then just click it over to start. It's gonna automatically start, and we'll jump outside. Alright, very cool. So the APU is basically a small jet engine in the tail of the aircraft that essentially is a generator. It's going to allow us to generate our own power in the aircraft while the engines are off, and it's also used to ram air into the engines to help get them started. So that's essentially what the APU is doing. It also runs the air conditioning system in the aircraft when the engines are not operating. Alright, hop back in. Now the APU is running. We're going to let that warm up for just a minute, and while that's happening, let's finish programming in our flight data into the FMC. So we need to get our initialization page set up. This is very important. So again, we're going to enter first zero fuel weight. We knew it was 112.4. We got 112.3 on board, so we're a little bit under what we're supposed to have. Pretty much rounding error there. That's fine. The planned fuel for today's flight was 10.0. So plug that in there. The reserves. Let's take a look here. Let's go back to our love cars here. We don't have an alternate plan for today. It's beautiful from here to Dallas, so we're not anticipating any type of diversion because of weather or anything like that. So we really don't need to carry any extra fuel for an alternate. We're just looking at what we have here in the reserves, which is 3.2. So we're going to go 3.2 right there. Cost index, standard cost index for Southwest is 40 for the NGs. So there's 40, and the cruise altitude today, I believe, was 30,000, was it not? Yeah, top of climb 300. So cruise altitude 300 gets plugged in right there. Now, for our average cruise wind for the flight, we're looking at the direction of the wind and the strength of the wind. And we saw that average wind right here, 291 at 44. So that's going to get plugged in, 291/44 right there. Okay, so that is the perf init page done. We need to execute that now. When you see this light come on here, you have to click that execute button. Now let's go to our N1 limits, and now we can set up our perf data. So before we do that, let's give the passengers some air conditioning now. So we're going to turn on the APU bleed, and then our packs here, left auto, right auto. Hear the air conditioner coming on? Very cool. Okay, I'm sure they appreciate that. Now let's jump down into the FMC again here. So what we need to do here is set up our takeoff performance data. Let's look at the cruise page and make sure that we're showing we're going to have enough fuel at Dallas. Shows we'll have 6 tons of fuel left on board at Dallas. That's great. That's plenty. We only need 4, so we'll go with that. Go back over here, N1 limit. Let's get our takeoff performance data set up. For that, we're going to go over to our EFB tablet. We're going to go to the performance tool, and here we have takeoff. We are going to select our runway that we're taking off from, which is 22. We're going to import the data from the aircraft, and we'll just we'll go ahead and say we're going to do flaps 5. You could just leave it on optimum and let it pick, but I'm going to pick flaps 5. I'm going to go ahead and pick that takeoff rating right there. We'll import the weather. Here's winds on the ground is 210 at 10 knots. It's 33 degrees Celsius. And again, the altimeter is 2993. We'll verify that is set, and that is set. We're going to calculate that, and you can see that it's giving us a cell temp of 58 degrees. It gives us our trim setting for takeoff here at 6.11, and it gives us our takeoff speeds. So V1 is the speed at which we can no longer stop. When we reach this speed, 124 knots, we have to take off no matter what happens with the aircraft. If it's a critical failure, then we would have to assess in the air and plan for a return back to Hobby. If it's non-critical, we could probably just go ahead and continue on to Dallas. Now, VR is your rotation speed, which is just slightly above your V1 speed. Basically, that's the speed at which we're going to start pulling back on the yoke and lifting off from the ground. V2 speed is the speed at which we're going to actually plug into our FMC, our MCP rather, which is our autopilot control panel on the top of the dash. Okay, so there's our data. Let's put in cell temp is 58. So we're going to go over here. I keep clicking that view. Sorry about that. We're going to go over here. Cell temp goes in there, 58. We're doing takeoff, and let's just do a standard climb out. Basically, if you do a climb 1 or climb 2, it's going to climb slower to preserve fuel. And we have plenty of fuel on board, so we're not really worried about that. Let's just get up to cruising altitude quicker. In this case, we're going to do a pure takeoff rating with a climb rating straight out. All right, let's go to takeoff. And we're going to go to the next page, and we're going to plug in our winds over here. Okay, so winds, we have on the ground 210 at 10 knots. So I did it again. 210/10 goes in there. There's no slope on the runway. It's flat here in Houston, of course. Go back to our previous page. We know our flaps is going to be flaps 5. The CG is automatically filled, 18.5. We can confirm that. CG right here, 18.5. Now our V1, VR, V2 speeds, 124, 125, 129. So we got 124 for V1. 125 is already here. We can populate that, and 129 is there as well. So that takes care of our takeoff performance data. All right, so we are just about ready for departure. Let's just go ahead and build the nest a little bit. Let's turn on some lights in here. Not necessary, but totally up to you. We'll just get some lights going. Okay. Let's go up to our upper panel. All right, now before we actually push back from the gate, let's get our MCP set up here. Okay, so we knew from our departure charts that WESLYN 8 departure for runway 22 is climb heading 221, which is our runway heading to 700 feet in the radar vector. So WESLYN top altitude is 16,000 feet. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in 16,000 here for our initial altitude into the altimeter. Okay, there's 16. And then heading 221. That's it. And then for our speed, again, we're looking at V2 speed here is 129. So 129 gets plugged in right here. All right, there we go. So we have our initial altitude, heading, and V2 speed plugged in. We'll go flight directors on the left first. Pilot and control is going to be flying, and then the right. Okay, we can go ahead and arm LNAV and VNAV. That's done. All right, so that's ready. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to enable the auto brakes into RTO. This is rejected takeoff. So if we have any type of problem before our V1 speed, it will automatically apply maximum braking force in order to get us stopped before the end of the runway. Okay, that's set. Now the last thing we need to do is go ahead and set our trim. So we know from our takeoff data that our trim is supposed to be 6.12. We're going to look down here and see here is our trim. We're going to have to do some adjustment here and get that down to 6.12. Alright, there you go. That's close enough. Alright, so I think we are just about ready to go ahead and get pushback from the gates. Let's get up here and let's verify that we do have power coming from the APU. Set that on APU gen. We do have good power coming in. We go ahead and switch over to the APU gens. We're going to click that down 1 and 2 for the left and right side. We'll go ahead and turn on all of our fuel pumps now. There's no fuel in the center tank, so no need to turn those on. Our electric hydraulic pumps can come on. We need to set our cruising altitude today is 30,000 feet. This is for our cabin pressurization. And for the landing altitude, we need to look at our charts again. We'll go over to Dallas Love, pull up the ground chart here. You can see airport elevation is 487 feet, and our pressurization can be set every 50 feet. So we set it just below that. We're going to go to 450. There's 450, so landing altitude is set. Alright, just looking through our panel, we can go ahead and turn on the yaw damper. Window heat and probe heat is to come. We can go ahead and turn on the no smoking and seat belts as we get ready to push back from the gate here. Next thing to do is we're on APU power, so we're completely being powered by the aircraft. We can go ahead and disconnect our ground connections. We'll come over to the EFB, go to ground operations. We're going to release ground power, remove the chocks, and get ready for pushback. So let's go ahead and tell the ground crew that we're ready for pushback. We're going to open up the GSX menu and prepare for pushback and departure. Now, since we are on VATSIM, we're going to go ahead and turn on TARA early as it is required for any movement across the airport.
We are ready for pushback.
And we'll go ahead and make a radio call once we get pushed out from the gate here. Just kind of look around. No one's to our left. No one's to our right. I don't think anyone's on the ground here right now at Houston. I'll pull up the chart real quick and take a look.
Departure checks completed. Bypass pin inserted.
Yeah, I don't see anyone on the ground here at Houston, so... But we'll go ahead and make our radio calls as we should.
Locking gear.
Okay, it gives us the option here. We know we're going to have to do nose right to get out of this gate.
Release parking brakes, please.
Alright, here we go.
Commencing push. All engines clear. Start at will.
Okay, parking brake is released. Now what we have to do is go ahead and turn off our packs. We can't have the AC running when we start the engines. So that's off. Anti-collision light comes on. And we're going to start the right engine first. We're going to just take this knob right here and turn it over to ground, just like that. We're going to monitor N1 here. We want to see N1 rising when it gets between 20 to 25%. That's when we're going to introduce fuel to the engine with this little fuel cutoff switch here. There's 20, 21, 22, good enough. Introduce the fuel.
Set parking brakes.
Okay, we're going to set the parking brake.
Waiting your confirmation for a good engine start.
All right, let's go ahead and just tell them that we have a good engine start so they can disconnect while we start the other engine. Confirm.
Cockpit to ground. We have a good
Okay,
engine
let's go
start.
up here. We're
You can
going
disconnect.
to turn off the bleed on the left engine. We're going to leave APU bleed on, and we're going to isolate the valve here. We'll leave the left pack off, and we can turn on auto on the right pack so it gets some air conditioning flowing to the passengers in the meantime while we go ahead and start that left engine. So we're good to go. Let's put the right engine over to cont mode for takeoff, and then we're going to switch left engine over to ground and repeat the same procedure. Looking for N1 to rise between 20 and 25%.
Unlocking gear.
There's 20%, and introduce the fuel.
Tow truck disconnected. Bypass pin removed. Left is clear. Right is clear.
Okay, so you can see he has the pin there, so we confirm that he does have the pin. That looks good. And the starter switch just clicked off. So we have two good starts. We'll switch that over to cont on the left side as well. Now what we'll do is we'll go on the bleeds on the left engine. We can go auto, and then we're going to turn off the APU bleed. Let's verify we have two good gens, Gen 2, Gen 1 confirms. Now we're going to switch our power for the aircraft over to the engines, left side, right side. Alright, now the APU is completely not required anymore. We're running the air conditioner and all power on the aircraft engines, so we can go ahead and turn off the APU just like that. Alright, now up here at the top, let's go ahead and turn on our window heat. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Probe heat 1 and 2 can come on. Just looking through the panel here, everything looks good. The only thing left to do is we need to turn on our taxi lights. Anti-collision stays on, nav stays on steady. When we get on the runway, you turn on your strobe lights and your landing lights, and you keep the strobe lights on the whole flight, landing lights on up until 10,000 feet. Okay, so let's set our flaps, and I think we're about ready to go ahead and get taxied out here. So we're going to go flaps 5. Very good. Flaps are set. Check the control surfaces, free and correct. And let's verify we are squawking 7407 TARA, and we're on 118.7, which is CTAF for Houston Hobby. So we'll go ahead and make our radio call. We got an FMC message here. Let's see what that's about. Verify takeoff speeds. Yeah, that looks good. All right, so VR rotation is 125. So we're going to be looking for, and then again vectors. We'll go direct to WESLYN on that departure. Let's go ahead and turn on traffic there, and we're ready for taxi. So we're going to make a radio call and get out to runway 22. Houston Hobby traffic Southwest 20 is taxiing runway 22 via Yankee. Houston Hobby. Okay, let's turn off the parking brakes and let's get out of here. So taxi speeds typically on the apron like this is no faster than 15 knots on an open taxiway, 20-30 knots maximum. you know, get a proper Southwest taxi going. Definitely going to be doing 30 knots. Any 90-degree turns, you do not want to take those faster than about 10 knots. You're going to risk tipping the wings over. Okay. Now, as we approach the hold short line here for the runway, typically, again, if ATC was online, of course, we would be getting takeoff clearance, but since they are not online, we're going to be just making a call out on the CTAF frequency. So the first thing we're going to do is do that, and then we'll get the aircraft set up. Houston Hobby traffic Southwest 20 is departing runway 22. It's going to be the WESLYN 8 to the north, Houston Hobby. Okay, so let's just look to our left. Looks clear. Let's get our lights on. Landing lights come on. Runway turnoff comes on. We can turn off taxi, and strobe and steady comes on. And we'll attend the flight attendants, let them know that we are cleared for departure. LNAV, VNAV is armed. Auto throttle is now armed. RTO is set. Flaps 5. Rotation is 129 set in the MCP. Let's get lined up. Okay, not a great lineup, but here we go. We're pretty much on the center line. We're going to go ahead and spool it up 50%. Look for stable engines. There's 50 and toga. We'll put a little forward pressure on the yoke until 80 knots. Airspeed's alive. 80 knots. Got some crosswind coming there. Try to keep it on the center line.
V1.
And rotate. Pull up on the yoke, get it up off the ground there. Ooh, a little bit of crosswind there, a little bit of crosswind. Start some trim correction, positive rate, gears coming up. All right, let's fly the plane. Airspeed fell off big time there when I was doing that flyby view, but it looked cool. There's downtown. Okay, airspeed is building. We're going to look for that flap retraction speed. There's flaps 1, and let's go ahead and enable the autopilot. Okay, airspeed is building, flaps up, speed checks. We can turn the gears off, go from RTO auto brake to off, and let's go heading select, and we're going to start that right turn to the north. Houston-Toppy traffic southwest 20 is through 4,000, right turn on course to the north. Last call, Houston-Toppy. Alright, so we are climbing up through 5,000 feet now. Let's go ahead and switch over to Unicom. That's 1228. And that's good for our radio calls unless ATC hops online. Alright, we're going to continue that climb up. Let's go ahead and put in a direct to WESLYN. So the way you do that is, let's do it on this side. Do progress there. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's go to legs here. So here is our first waypoint, WESLYN, at the start of that departure. We're just going to click that to copy it to the scratch pad. We're going to paste it right there at the top, and you can hit execute. Now what we need to do is enable LNAV, and it's going to turn to that waypoint. There we go. So you can confirm we have N1. We're climbing on the planned performance departure. LNAV, it's going to laterally navigate to that waypoint. And VNAV is going to, VNAV speed, it's going to climb at our planned VNAV speed out of the Houston airspace. So we're approaching 10,000 feet. What we can do is go ahead and turn off our landing lights. Over 10,000 feet, they come off. Engines can go to off and off. What the CONT does is if you have an engine failure, it's going to automatically try to restart that engine. So that's good. Logo is off, strobes are on, anti-collision stays on, and everything else looks good here. We can go ahead and attend. There's the ding-dong you hear over 10,000 feet. You're now cleared to use your large electronic devices. So everything on the upper head panel looks good, and we're navving, we're looking good. We're looking for next 18,000 feet for our transition altitude. We're going to switch our altimeters from the local setting at 2993 over to standard. So just verifying, so we have our initial altitude of 16,000 in. At this point, if ATZO is online, they'd go ahead and tell us to climb and maintain 30,000 feet. So Southwest 20, go ahead, climb and maintain 300. Roger, climb and maintain flight level 300, Southwest 20. So go ahead and plug that in here. We're going to continue that climb up to our cruising altitude of 30,000 feet. And there it is. Okay, so now we're laterally navigating based on our flight computer here. And just going to turn the volume down just a smidge here. So basically, we don't have to do anything with the heading here, but it's kind of standard procedure is you want to keep your heading bugs centered. That way, if anything were to happen and you needed to go to heading select mode, for example, maybe ATC is going to give you vectors, it's a good idea to go ahead and have your heading bug set to the direction you're currently flying. So we'll go ahead and put that over to 008. There we go. So every time we kind of make a turn, we'll just kind of have to adjust that as we go. But MCP looks good, and you can see down here that we're tracking towards our first waypoint there at WESLYN. Let's pull up our charts here again. Just go over that departure briefing one more time. You can see here is our indication of where we are as we head towards WESLYN. Then we're going to Mont, Killjoy, and Magic out of the Houston airspace. We can overlay that chart and get an idea of where that's going to put us. Like you can see here is Lake Conroe and what is that, Lake Livingston, I think, over there. So it heads quite a ways out of the Houston controlled airspace there. Okay. Now let's talk about a couple things. So we're over 18,000 feet, so we can go ahead and hit standard on the altimeters, and you can see standard there. Standard is 2992, so over 18,000 feet, everyone runs the same altimeter setting. So we've got standard on the captain's side, on the standby altimeter here, and over on the first officer side as well as on standard. Just talking about a couple things on the FMC here. So this is the legs page. We talked about that. If, for example, ATC comes on and says, you know, Southwest 20 cleared direct Killjoy. Basically, you would come in here and say, oh, okay, you come into your flight plan, you find the waypoint that he's giving you a direct to. You would just simply, here's Killjoy, you would simply click the button next to it. You can see it puts it in the scratch pad, place it at the top, and you can see that it has temporarily put it here. Now, if I were to click execute, it would literally just immediately navigate directly to that waypoint from my current position. Obviously, I don't want to do that right now, so I'm just going to click erase, and boom, that's gone. So the legs page, it's pretty straightforward. One thing you can do is go to route data, and you want to request your winds. And what this is going to do is it's going to pull the upper level wind forecast, which is going to be crucial for giving you accurate ETAs and fuel burn calculations at specific waypoints. Because if we pull up our flight plan here and we scroll down, here's our waypoints. So for example, we're heading towards WESLYN now. You can see, let's see, where's it at? ETAs, here we go. Fuel on board, AFOB. Okay, so at WESLYN, it's predicting 7.2 tons of fuel on board. So if we look at this, cruise winds are ready. Let's go ahead and click on load. Okay, so there's our ETAs now. We execute that, and we go back to legs, and we can clear that. So if we look at this, at WESLYN, here's our ETA, 1248 Zulu, and it is currently 1247, so we're about to be there in just a minute. Let's go to the next page. You see I have 4 different pages here. See, I thought it had fuel. Oh, I know what I need to do. Let's go to progress. Here we go, progress. Right here. So distance to go to WESLYN is showing 2 miles. ETA is there, 1248 Zulu. And fuel is 7.6. So it's estimating we're going to have 7.6 tons of fuel remaining at WESLYN. And according to our flight plan, we're supposed to have 7.2. So we knew that we had more fuel than we needed on board. So that, you know, that's fine. The most important thing that we want to be monitoring in this situation throughout our flight is every time we get to one of our waypoints in our flight plan, we want to look at what that estimated fuel on board remaining number is, and we want to see that we have at least that much, if not more, remaining at that waypoint. And we know that our fuel calculations are accurate, or at a very minimum, we're going to safely reach our destination with enough fuel. So that's what you can do. That's one thing you can do. On this progress page, it's going to give you information from your last waypoint to the current waypoint you're navigating to. So we're already over the WESLYN waypoint. Now we're heading to Mont. And if we look here, the next, and it's going to give you the next waypoint. So it's giving you all that data here, your distance to go, ETA, and fuel from the last to the current and the next. It also gives you that to your destination. So it's saying basically on the ground at Dallas Love is looking at 1326 Zulu. And again, right now it is 1249. So pretty short flights. But more importantly, we have right now it's showing time to top of climb is 1251 Zulu and 10 miles now. So basically a couple more minutes, we're going to reach our cruising altitude. You can see we're already at 275. Once we reach our top of climb, this is going to switch to top of descent. And that's the calculated point at which we have to begin our descent down into our arrival into Dallas. That's going to be a very helpful number because when you're, especially on a longer flight, you need to know about how long you have until basically you need to be at the controls and prepared to fly the descent into your arrival. Good rule of thumb is when you're about 40 nautical miles out from your top of descent, it's time to start getting the airplane ready to go. You're going to start briefing the approach and setting up things like the ILS localizer frequency and all of that, which we will do. I guess a couple other things I would talk about the FMC. We already saw the route page. Descent page is good. What you want to do here is go to forecast, and you want to pull up the winds, the predicted winds for the different flight levels throughout your descent, because that will obviously impact your performance and your descent rates and things like that. Typically, you would wait until you're much closer to your airport. Since this is such a short flight, we can just go ahead and do it now. So I can just show you. We're just going to click on load, and that's going to go ahead and load those descent winds. You can see now it has wind predictions at flight level 250 at 15,000 feet, at 6,000 feet, you know, winds at 283 degrees, 47 knots, and so on. And again, the FMC, the flight management computer, is going to use that to better fly your descent into your destination. So we need to execute that, and now that's been executed into the flight computer. Okay, we have reached our cruising altitude here at 30,000 feet, and we'll just take a couple quick looks around. Let's center our heading bug. Lake Livingston down there. All right, let's go back down to our FMC here. And if you haven't already set up your arrival, you would do that now. We've already done that, so that's fine. Another thing that you can do that's helpful is go to the fix page, and let's plug in the airport. So it's KDAL. We'll put that in the fix there. And let's get some range rings that are basically going to show up here. I like to put them at... you could do like 30, 20, and 10, but I like to do at least 20 and 10 nautical miles. So it's just going to put a range ring around the airport at 20 nautical miles and 10 nautical miles, and you can use that to help gauge your distance from the airport for things like radio calls and where you should be in preparing the aircraft for the arrival. So the easiest way to do that is just hit /20 for 20 nautical miles, and then /10 for 10 nautical miles. Alright, so that is in, and we should be able to see that because we're fairly close to the airport. If we zoom out a little bit, there you go, you can see those range rings right there, and as we get closer, they'll be much larger, obviously. And if we look at this, might have to go to the plan view. Let's go to plan view, and let's go to legs, and we'll step, zoom in. Right here, see, it shows top of descent, T/D. So when we reach that point, that's going to be our top of descent, and when we're about 40 nautical miles out from that top of descent, we'll go ahead and get things ready to go. But if we zoom out, I mean, we're close. We're close, actually, about 40 nautical miles out, so we could go ahead and do that in just a minute. Let's jump back down here. So that's good. I think everything pretty much has been covered here. The only thing to do now is, since we are basically about 40 nautical miles out from our top of descent, let's go ahead and get the initialization set for our approach. So you're going to hit the init ref button, and since we're at cruising altitude right now, it's going to automatically go to your approach reference page. and this is where you're going to set your flap setting for the landing. Typically, it's going to be anywhere between 30 to 40 degrees of flaps. I usually do about 30 because the speed difference isn't that big. Between 40 degrees flaps is saying that the approach speed, the reference speed, is going to be 125 knots versus 30 at 128. And typically, you're going to have a wind correction of about plus 5 to 10 knots. I usually do about 5 knots. So if you were doing 40 degrees flaps, you'd have 125 reference VREF speed is what it's called. Add 5 knots, it's going to be 130. So we'll do 30 degrees flaps. That's good enough. So we're just going to copy that into the clipboard there and then paste it right there. So 30 degrees, reference speed, 128 plus 5 knots. So that's set. All right, now the next thing we have to do is we need to get our radio frequencies for the ILS set up. So if you're doing an ILS approach, you have to set up the ILS localizer radio frequency, among other things. What we have to do there is, again, where Navigraph comes in handy, let's just pop that up here. And let's go to the approach plate for ILS 13 left. And we are expecting that. Let me double check and see. Let's look at the VATSIM radar here. I mean, we could probably get the ATIS this far out on the radio, and we can try. But you can look at it on the radar here is helpful. So it says KDL arrival departure info is Zulu, so we're going to check in and let them know that we have Zulu, just telling them that we have checked the weather and we know what the weather is. It's saying that the wind is 170 at 3 knots, so really light winds out of the south. 10 miles of visibility, few clouds at 6,500 feet, few at 9,000, scattered at 25,000. So pretty much a beautiful day. It's hot, 32 degrees Celsius. Altimeter is 29086. Simultaneous visual approaches on 13 left and 13 right, and use departing 13 left and 13 right, and advise you have Zulu. Okay, so that ATIS frequency was just for grins, so that we can see if we can pull it. We can hear that on the radio. Is 120150. So we can go and close that. 120150. Okay. Let me turn off Navigraph so you can see. 120. Yeah, 120150. There it is. Tune. Don't hear anything. We may be too far away. Let me make sure my audio settings are correct. I don't hear anything yet. We can come back and check that. So let's go back to Unicom for now. Okay, so go back to Navigraph. Here's the approach plate. So we need to look at a couple things on here. First of all, ILS frequency is 111.5. So we are going to come down to our radio panel here. Let's adjust this so you can see that right here. So the top here is your radio communication, and this is your navigation here. So we're going to put in the 111.5 here in the standby, 111.5, and transfer that over to the active so that checks. Okay, so radio frequency is set. Next thing we need to look at here is the final approach course, which is 133 degrees. So that's going to get put in right here on our course knob, 133. And over here as well. So we're getting an FMC message just telling us we need to change our altitude on our MCP, which we'll do that in just a minute. We're just about at the top of descent here. Okay, and then minimums is 685. We'll get that set in just a minute. Let's pull up the arrival chart. So what we're looking for here is what is the bottom altitude of the arrival? Well, the last altitude listed is 9,000 feet. So we have to input that into the MCP up here. So we're going to put in 9,000 feet. Now, what happens is the aircraft, as soon as you reach that top of descent, which we just did, will automatically start descending. As long as this MCP, the altitude on the MCP here, is set below your current cruising altitude. So that's kind of the nice thing about the Boeing, is it will just automatically descend for you. So we've got that bottom altitude set here. Now we know obviously we are going to be going lower, but we will probably be expecting vectors. It looks like ATC is going to be in line for our approach into Dallas. So let's go ahead and center that heading bug. There we go. Now let's go back to our charts and pull up the approach plate one more time. We got to get our minimum set. So our minimum altitude, our decision altitude, is 685 feet. So that's going to be set right here with this knob. And you see when I do that, down here at the bottom, it says Baro 228. You can choose radio or Baro. Typically you use Baro. So we need to set that to 685. Interesting, when you go into Denver, it takes a little while. All right, so there you go. So we got Baro minimums 685. Pull up our charts one more time. 685, that checks. Then we have our approach course, 133 degrees, and that also checks up here, 133. And then we have our ILS frequency, 111.5, checks here, 111.5. Okay, so the aircraft is set up for the ILS approach. Now let's just brief this approach. Again, as we come into the arrival, we're going to fly this arrival here. Our first restriction is it happens at 280 knots, below 30,000, above 24. Let's go down and look at the legs page here. Let's do legs over here, and we'll do init there. So it's telling me unable 250 knots at overkill, or overall, whatever that waypoint was. That is, yeah, Orville, I guess. So it's saying, and I'm realizing you probably can't see that, but there you go. It says unable 250 knots at Orville. It probably has to do with the fact that we're going to be too fast. So we're just going to have to deploy the speed brakes. It's a pretty common procedure in the Boeing 737. But let's look at this restriction here. Again, that first restriction is it happens 280 knots, below 30,000, above 24. We just want to make sure that that is inputted in here correctly. And I think, oh, we're already past happens actually. So we're at 280 knots and we're below 24. So we definitely made that restriction. If we look at our chart, the next restriction is Orville. So 250 knots at 9,000 feet. If you look at the MCP here, it says 250, 9,000, so that is inputted correctly. And that is the last restriction until we reach the approach to the runway. So we're just monitoring this right now as we descend. We want to make sure that we stay around 280 knots, or right at 280 knots according to that approach, until we get to Orville, which is going to be that 250 knot speed restriction. Okay, so one last time we're going to look at the approach plate here. So again, I'm going to be expecting those radar vectors unless ATC hops offline. We'll just vector ourselves. We're basically going to be looking for those radar vectors somewhere over here toward Wade's. And at Wade's, it's saying here on the approach plate that we need to be at 2,500 feet. And then we descend down to Nate, where we need to be at 1,900 feet. And this right here indicates where the glide slope is going to be picked up. And then the aircraft is going to fly that descent using the localizer all the way down to the runway. If we have to go around, the missed approach is going to be climbed to 1,000 feet, then climbing left turn to 3,000 feet on a heading of 060 degrees on the outbound CVE VOR radial. And then most likely, if ATC is online, they're just going to give us vectors. They're not going to make us fly all the way out to this holding point right here. You would basically, if you miss approach, you're coming in like this. You miss approach, you would make that left turn out like this to this holding point at Soldo. Most likely, if ATC is online, they're just going to vector you back around into the traffic pattern for that landing. Okay, now let's look at the diagram for Dallas Love. Here's runway 13. We're going to be landing just like this. The terminals are to the right, so we're basically going to be taking most likely the exit here at Mike 3 if all goes well, and then they're probably just going to give us a taxi right into Bravo 4 to the gate. I don't think they have good gate coordinates for this airport. They don't, so I don't know exactly where gate, I think it was 10 was, but it doesn't matter. We don't have to go to gate 10. So that's what it looks like there. So we're going to be expecting a right turn off of the runway once we land. So that is the arrival and approach briefing complete. You can see here we've got some traffic around us. Looks like they're going to DFW, so that should be no factor for us. So as we approach this controlled airspace here, we need to go ahead and start getting tuned to that frequency. So that's going to be 125025 according to VATSIM. Let me close Navigraph. So we're below 18,000 feet. Let's go to standard. And let's see if we can get anything on that radio frequency real quick for the ATIS. Still not hearing anything. Let me double check my audio.
Visibility 10. Few clouds at 6,500. Few clouds at 9,000. 25,000 scattered. Temperature 32. 2.23. Altimeter 2986. Simultaneous visual approach runway 13 left. 13 right in use. Departing runway 13 left. 13 right. Advise on initial contact. You have information Zulu.
Okay, information Zulu.
Airport arrival departure information Zulu 1753 Zulu. Westcom. Visibility 10. Few clouds at 6,500. Few clouds at 9,000. 25,000 scattered. Temperature 32. 2.23. Altimeter 2986. Simultaneous visual approach runway 13 left. 13 right in use. Departing runway 13 left.
Okay, 2986
right.
is our altimeter.
Advise on initial contact. You have information Zulu. Dallas Love Airport arrival departure information Zulu 1753 Zulu.
Okay, altimeters are set.
Visibility 10.
Let's get our radio frequency tuned.
At 6,500.
125025.
25,000 scattered. Temperature 32. 2.23. Altimeter 29.
Okay. Approach, good day, Southwest 20 is 8 south of Orville. It's 10,000.
Southwest 20, Lone Star approach. Information, Zulu's current at low. If you can expect a visual approach to 13 left.
Alright, we have Zulu on board and expecting 13 left to Southwest 20, thanks. Alright. So there's 10,000 feet. Let's go landing lights on. Runway turnoff can come on. Engines conts and conts. Let the cabin crew know that we're at 10,000 feet. Time to put away those large electronic devices. Lights otherwise look good. And we're going to be expecting those radar vectors. According to, again, the charts, we're looking at 9,000 at Orville. And we're on target for that. 9,250. There's our alert that we're 1,000 feet away from...
Southwest 2923, Lone Star departure, radar contact, stay altitude leaving. S32.7, Southwest. Fairway's 2729, looks like you're going the wrong direction. Can you whip a 180, a left turn there, left 180 and go northbound on Kilo? Oh, yep, sorry about that, Fairway 2729. Yeah, if you'll make a left turn here, go straight up on Kilo and then all the way down to the end. Roger, Spur Wing 2729. Southwest 2923, roger. Radar contact 3,500 now. Climb and maintain 17,000. Direct 4, resume my navigation. 17,000, direct 4, navigation, Southwest 2923. Southwest 20, descend and maintain 6,000.
Down to 6,000, Southwest 20. Alright, so he gave us 6,000. Let's go 6,000 in the box. In the MCP, there we go. We're going to continue that descent. Let's put some speed brakes in. Get back on target. Actually, I need to do a vertical descent mode.
Blue Shake 5100, Lone
Do
Star
1,500
approach.
feet per minute.
Good afternoon. You can expect visual. Are you parking east or west today?
Well, we'll be parking on the east side, Echo Terminal for Blue Street 5100.
Blue Shake 5100, plan of vision approach 17 center. Information, Bravo's turn.
Roger, we get the information from Bravo. That's visual 1 center, Blue Street 5100.
Yeah, good. Are you with the video stand? Correct parking method. And that one, rider check.
Qatar 2 Juliet, Lone Star departure. They already sent you a PDC, confirm you received it.
Qatar 2 Juliet, say again, please.
Qatar 2 Juliet, I sent you a PDC, pre-departure clearance. Did you receive it?
Okay, there's our range ring. So you can see we're approaching that 20 nautical mile range ring from the airport.
Qatar 2 Juliet, Roger, I had
You see,
in the departure.
here we are on that arrival, heading towards
Qatar 2
G
Juliet, Roger. Push
then
is
red in the
approved, and you
Bocker,
can
and
call
we'll look
ready
for
for
those
taxi.
vectors. What we can do is overlay that approach chart just like this.
We'll call you when we're ready to taxi. Qatar 2 Juliet.
Okay,
Southwest
let's
2923, forward stairs offline, frequency change approved, have a great flight.
run a quick landing. Expecting 1 through left. Import the details. Reversers, we're expecting full reversers. Let's plan auto brakes 3 setting, import the weather, calculate. Looks like we need 5,000 feet and we have 7,700 available. Alright, so we're going to do auto brakes 3, 1, 2, and 3. So that's set. Speed brakes armed, yet to come. Flaps, yet to come. We're leveling at 6,000. The last
Qatar
altitude
2
he gave
Juliet, no
us.
problem. I have your clearance. Let me know when you're ready to copy.
Qatar 2 Juliet, ready to copy.
Qatar 2 Juliet, you're cleared to Doha via the ZAC 4 departure. BizCat transition, then as filed. Climb via SID. Expect your cruise limit 10 minutes after departure. Departure frequency is 125.025. Squawk 2365.
So here we are right here. We'll see how he vectors us, but I would expect probably a turn into Wades.
Qatar 2 Juliet, you can expect the runway 17 right, 17 right.
One turn right and departure 4. We are transit got Qatar 2 Juliet right.
17 right, that's correct.
Oh, there's downtown Dallas right there. Oh, that looks great.
Southwest 20, flighting 320, descend and maintain 4,000.
Heading 320 down to 4,000 Southwest 20. Alright, we're going to do heading select. Let's get the right 320. There we go. And down to 4,000. Vertical speed that down. We'll do 1,200 feet per minute. Should be plenty. Probably do 1,000 feet per minute. We still have to fly downwind.
Departure Spirit Wings 2729, we're ready to go.
Let's drop our speed down to 210.
Southwest, or I'm sorry, Spirit Wings 2729. RNAV to Sparrow, runway 17 right, clear for takeoff.
So we're looking at 5.4 tons of fuel on board
takeoff 17 right, Spirit Wings 2729.
at Dallas, which is meeting that 4-ton minimum for the virtual airline, so we're good. Okay. So
Southwest 20, flighting 310.
heading 310 Southwest 20. 310. So we are flaps 30, speed 128 plus 5, so we're looking at 132. 133. And if you look at the screen here, you know, here's our location flying this direction. Here's the runway right here, and then here's that that first, or that localizer waypoint. This is where we capture the localizer at Nate. So you can see he's basically flying us a left downwind. We're flying downwind to the airport right now. If we look out off of the left side of the aircraft, we're going to see the airport. There's downtown, and the airport should be right over here somewhere. There it is, right there. There it is. Okay, we'll go ahead and drop first notch of flaps here.
Southwest 20, set to maintain 3,000, low field, 10 o'clock, fly 5 miles, port field size.
Down to 3,000 field size, Southwest 20.
Southwest 20, roger. I'll have you cleared for you momentarily.
Yep, no worries, thanks. Vertical speed. Now up, we're gonna go down, there we go.
Spirit Wings 2729, what's our departure radar
V
contact?
speed 700.
Spirit Wings 2729, 2,400. Rise 2729, roger. Climb and maintain 10 down. Climb and maintain 10,000, Spirit Wings 2729.
Okay, let's bump the speed down to 200 in case he just gives us that turn straight into the localizer there. And we'll go flaps 5.
Southwest 20, clear visual approach, runway 13 left.
Clear visual approach, 13 left, Southwest 20. Alright, he's going to give us the visual. So what I'm going to do, I mean, we're just about, I mean, there's the runway, so we're going to have to go just a little bit further before I make that turn. And we're probably good to go ahead and start making that turn. We'll just turn this way. Kind of come in at an angle there. Let's drop the speed down. 180. We'll start getting fully configured. We're going to go one more notch of flaps here. 15. Okay. Finish our turn on base.
Southwest 20, wind calm, runway 13 left, clear to land.
Clear to land 13 left, Southwest 20. Okay, we're turning right towards the localizer waypoint there.
5100, traffic
at
11
Nate.
o'clock, northeast bound. Spirit wings, climbing to 10,000.
Blue Street 51, that's their beach.
Okay, so let's do this. We're cleared for the visual, but we're going to go ahead and
5100, he's past the
put in
90
the
no factor.
waypoint to the localizer, and we can LNAV.
Blue Street 5100, center maintain 6,000.
And we need to get down to 1900.
Street 5100.
Spirit wings 2729, climb and maintain 17,000.
And we'll put in
17,000, Spirit wings 2729.
speed 133. Gear down. Arm the approach. Okay, the VOR localizer has been captured here, you can see. And the autopilot is starting that turn inbound. You slow it down a little bit, let's get some speed brakes in here. Okay, let's get the final approach course plugged in to our heading bug, 133. 133 is set. VREF speed is set, and 1900 localizer altitude is set. And we have the runway in sight there. Autopilot's going to have a little bit of trouble there capturing it, I think, so we're going to go ahead and disable autopilot and manually fly it in. There's the runway. Bank angle check. Okay, speed brakes retracted and armed.
Airspeed low. Airspeed low.
Check on the airspeed. We're above our reference speed. I'm going to go ahead and disable the auto throttle so I have full control of the aircraft now. And let's get lined up with the runway. Okay, gears down, 3 green locked. Landing flaps are not set.
Spirit wings 2729, forward center's offline. Approve the change, approved. Have a great flight.
And one more notch on the flaps. We're high. Okay, flaps are set.
Blue Street 5100, descend and maintain 4,000.
Not a great approach.
Blue Street 5100.
See if we can save it here.
Approaching
Sync rate.
minimums.
Sync rate check.
Sync rate.
Speed looks good. Alright, there it is.
100. 50. 30.
Idle.
10.
Ooh, nice touchdown. Okay, reversers green. Bring the nose wheel down. There we go. Decelerating. Alright, through 70 knots, reversers idle.
18 left.
Tires 2G late. That's approved. You can expect 18 left.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
auto
sir.
brake off.
We're expecting a runway in a departure.
Didn't mean to stop.
Runway 18.
Let's keep it rolling.
Thank you.
Southwest 20, you can exit right when able to exit parking. Monitor ground this frequency.
Right when able, taxi parking monitors frequency. Thanks, Southwest 20. Alright. Well, not the smoothest approach, but pretty good touchdown. We'll take a look at that landing rate as soon as we get off the runway and park it here. I'm going to make this right turn. And we'll get the aircraft cleaned up. Let's just get off the runway. Clear left and clear right.
Blue Street 5100, set to maintain 3,000, turn left heading 270.
3,000 and 270. Blue Street 5100.
Okay, that nose wheel dragging on the ground there. Okay, let's get the aircraft cleaned up. So let's go to the overhead first. Let's go ahead and get the APU started. Engines can go to off and off. Landing lights can go off, off. Runway turn off, off. Taxi on, strobe off. Everything up there looks good. And we need to clean up the flaps. So let's go ahead and get our flaps up. Okay. I don't
Shake 5100,
know what
flighting 230
gate.
to
We're
DFW
just going to
airport
go
at
to this
11
gate
o'clock
over
and
here, I
15
think.
miles. Report to field in sight.
Picture left 230, we'll let you know. Please keep talking on
And typically what you would do is you would start the timer here. You need about 2 to 3 minutes of cooldown time for the engines before you turn them off, but I think we're going to be good by the time we get parked up here. Okay, let's further clean up. Flight directors off and off.
190 to join the final. Cleared visual approach.
Flaps are up, speed brakes are retracted.
190 to join the
I don't know what gate that is. What is that? Gate 3? Let's talk to the ground crew here. Show all positions. Gate 3. No. Alright, we're all set. Okay, taxi lights can come off on the ramp here.
Potential aircraft. Going to be shutting down in about 10 to 15 minutes. You're on the 312.
Here's our turn into the gates. Looks like we have two traffic controllers there. Ground crew guys. I'm not sure which one to follow. So one of them is the default guy, and the other one is obviously the GSX add-on mod. We can go to our taxi cam here. Not really that helpful. I'm gonna follow the GSX guy. We can look at this view actually. Do it ourselves. And there's our mark. Stop. There we go. Alright, so let's set the parking brake. Now before we turn off the engines, let's check and see what our landing rate was here.
Wind calmer, runway 17.
Here we go. Oh, look at that. 86 feet per minute. That was a greaser. Awesome. Alright, so now what we want to do is APU is up and running. We can verify that APU is up and running. Let's go window heat off, 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 probe heat off and off, yaw damper off. Let's switch over to APU power on the left, on the right, and lights are good. We cut the fuel to the engines, 1 and 2. Back up to the overhead panel, anti-collision off, seatbelts off. And back up to overhead panel, APU bleed on, isolation valve open, and we get air conditioning working again. So that pretty much completes a full flight in the PMDG Boeing 737. Going to the overhead panel, if you're going to do your next leg for the flight, you could go ahead and disembark your passengers and repeat the process and start getting things set up again. FMC computer's been cleared.
Runway 18 left, taxi via Golf, Whiskey.
Switch frequencies there. So you could go ahead and input your new one in, but at this point we'll just go ahead and wrap it up here, and sure appreciate it. That looks good. Enjoy the flight.